Ben from Archrival. Session title, Hype's Not Dead, Creating Authentic Brand Energy in the Upswell of Culture. Please welcome Ben to the stage. Thank you.
I got a hype track. I realize that I stand between you and a break, and many of you probably need to pee or get coffee. I promise I won't take too long. It's a 90-minute session. We'll be in and out of here pretty quick. Just kidding. Okay, that was a brilliant panel. Shout out to everyone there. Loved so many of those insights, particularly this question of like, how do you truly partner and break through in culture today? And what I've heard through our agency and the relationships we have with CMOs, marketers, people like yourselves from all around the world is that the old model of marketing, holy shit, it doesn't work anymore. Like we used to have these formulas. Like take even the traditional marketing funnel. We used to have these ways in which we could sort of see the world and know that if we do X, Y, and Z as marketers, we tend to get the results we're looking for. We know we can sort of build awareness in these ways, and if we splash an ad here, it'll work. But the reality is Gen Z's totally broken this entire thing. I don't know how many of you are marketers in the room sort of struggling with figuring out how do we actually create some energy around our brand? What happened to the idea of hype? Like, it's a problem that so many marketers talk about. For us as an agency, this is where we've really invested, is trying to figure out how do we break through in culture today. As we were just introed, like we're Archrival, we're a youth culture agency. Super quick, shameless plug. We work with a ton of cool brands, from like Adidas to Spotify to Red Bull. And our job is to help them stay at the forefront of culture, to figure out where is culture going next. How do we stay tapped in? How do we help continue to build relevance, as this panel was just talking about? And it's our job to kind of help them figure that out. But then there's like those really uncool brands. Maybe like you haven't shown up to market, you're new to market, or maybe you were really cool once back in the day, but you kind of lost your way a little bit. Actually, shout out to the very first session, Abercrombie. We've been working with them, Abercrombie Hollister, for the last 5 years. Like, how do you reinvent yourself in a whole new way? And for us, it's all about connecting to culture in truly meaningful ways. But the question we're asking now is like, what's happened to this old formula? Like, we all have seen the big sneaker launches 5 years ago, where everyone in culture would sort of get all about a product, or even take like a fashion week, right? This sense of all of the energy of an entire industry sort of being around one moment. Or even something like the Super Bowl, which now you could question its effectiveness for marketers. When you've got someone like Jimmy, Mr. Beast, who can actually reach more of an audience just through his YouTube channel and his community in a period of time than you can actually get with the entire world watching the Super Bowl. Like, things have changed. Things have shifted dramatically. And we know Gen Z has upended so much of what we know about old marketing formulas. In fact, when you look at how they interact in their world, like their phone, yeah, like they shop on it, but they also like learn on it. It's where they interact with all their friends. It's where they're engaging content, listening to music. It's their news source. I mean, their entire lives are on it. All in one giant, global, fluid feed of never-ending information, education, entertainment. We all know that feeling, right? We all live and breathe on our phones. And in fact, it's actually changed dramatically how they actually see brands. In fact, what we heard in one of our studies is that only 25% of Gen Zs actually trust advertising. They've grown up with it since the earliest age. So our old ways of doing this, I think Brian actually said it really well on the panel. You can't just slap an ad on it and expect suddenly that they're going to go, oh, that's cool, you put a basketball with it. It's like, no, like they can see right through all our bullshit. Like they know what's going on. And 69% of them have actually said that brands are more in my face than ever before. So they can tell what's BS. They know we're just inundating them in this space that which they live and breathe. And for a lot of marketers, it just feels like chaos. It just feels like, how do you cut through? How do you break through? You know, every time we get a brief, it's like, make it go viral. It's like, I don't know if that's the right question, right? But we all sort of want that. We all think that way. But the reality is that, like, so much has changed. In fact, at Ford, they actually had this in one of their sort of conference rooms. They called it one of their war rooms. And it was this idea that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think that's really true for a ton of marketers. And so we've been digging into this idea of like, what is the marketing funnel today? What's the strategy that's going to help brands connect with youth culture in a meaningful way? And at the end of the day, what we found is that the old models are just not working today. that there's whole new ways to sort of reinvent how to connect authentically with culture. And I want to talk about it today. In fact, we dug into this. We did a whole report called The Funnel's Fucked. We shared it last year, actually, here at YMS. And then Vogue, they've been great partners of ours for many years. They actually said, let's blow this up. So we actually co-created this really cool article with Vogue. It just went live on Vogue Business like a week ago. Go check it out, read the whole report. But it just dives into all the data. I'm not going to walk you through all of this because, quite frankly, you can go read it yourself, and it's awesome, and it's super interactive and very fun, ton of great social content. But what I want to talk to you about today is how do we break through that noise? Like, what's the actual solution? And I'm going to give you a little bit of our playbook that we use with our clients as an agency to start to reimagine how you connect with young people today in youth culture. And I'll start with this stat, and maybe this is like the most, nope, that's not it. How do I go backwards? Which button is it? No, this is it. That's different. I changed this slide. This is like the one stat, if you could take anything away from this, that I feel like is the most dynamic thing, that really sheds light on where culture is. Back in the day, I'm a millennial, elder millennial, 40% of us believe that trends are created by brands. But the huge shift is that 52% of Gen Z are saying that trends are actually created by people. Like, only 15% of Gen Z think that brands are creating trends today. Like, that's a massive shift in only a period of like 10 years, where brands were in many ways the sort of center of hot culture and what was coming up next and what trend was going to be popping. They were putting that energy out into the world, and Gen Z's come along and said, like, no, that's ours. Like, we'll do that. We don't really need you. But you can come along and like help be a part of this party. You can come to our party and like help amplify it. But the reality is that power dynamic has shifted dramatically. And in some ways, if I could summarize it, it's like what's out is your brand at the center of the universe, but we've all sort of designed our marketing models kind of around that, and what's in is that people are at the center. What's out is like these really tight central plans for your brand. What's in is like building these networks of partnerships and creators. I loved how many people on the panel talked about this, co-creating with culture. What's out is linear consumer journeys, believing that if I can just get you some level of awareness, then maybe you'll consider me, then you'll purchase, and then you'll become loyal. Like, nothing is linear in our world today, but instead it's this very fluid process. What's out are these very predicted culture moments, like where we anchor around a fashion week or, some sort of big back-to-school moment. The reality is that culture happens in its own speed, and it's in an instant and in a moment, and we've got to be ready for it. Highly planned calendars versus fluid marketing systems, tight brand control, needing everything to look perfect and say the right thing and be there, like, that's gone. Like, today it's all about co-creating your brand with culture. This becomes this mentality that we have of really helping brands usher in this sort of new way of connecting with culture today. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of our formula that we've really anchored on. We're a youth culture agency. We always have been for the last 25 years. For a period of that time, we were all about guerrilla marketing because that's what was driving youth culture. And then we became a digital shop because everything was digital. And we've done a lot in influencer marketing because those are the waves that we've sort of ridden with youth culture. Well, today, we've sort of reinvented and continued to evolve ourselves to be a space where we help brands build brand communities that invite consumers to co-create what's next. That's what we do day in and day out. It's literally build the world's best brand communities. What do I mean by brand communities? It's a whole bunch of stuff. That's like the most loyal fans of your brand. That's influencers, sure. That's creators. That's people reviewing your product. That's shoppers. That's your actual employees. Trying to figure out how do we connect with people who are already passionate fans about what we care about and our brand and help co-create the future of our brand and our story and how we tell our story out in the world. So a couple of quick thoughts on this, like what's a brand community? How do we do it? 3 big things I want to talk about. First is how do you give access? How do you give access to young people today, to your brand, to your product, to who you are, to your values? How do you invite them into your story? Second is how do we like really humble ourselves as marketers who think we kind of have it all figured out and really listen to where culture's going? Listen to what they think about our products. Truly welcome them to the table to give honest, frank, raw feedback. And then third, how do we empower them to tell our story better than we ever could? I actually love some of the stories here. It's like if you give a camera to young people, watch what they make. And so often it's more creative, it's more interesting, it's more dynamic than what we as marketers could even come up with. So that's what we're going to talk about, just these 3 quick things. And then I promise you get a break. So this first idea is giving access. 54% of Gen Z actually say that their favorite brands are ones that make them feel like they're a part of a community, that they're a part of it, that that's their brand, that they're in it with you, right? Like that goes so beyond sort of traditional ways of thinking about a transactional sort of relationship that so often we as marketers consider our relationship to consumers to be. Here's a great quote from Joanne. I like when brands know their target audience and actually talk to those people instead of just marketing to every single person out there. I like it when there's a personal connection. It's about giving them access to behind the scenes. Here's a great example of this. We didn't do this work, but it's super inspiring. Topicals, a great brand that's been on the scene. But at the end of the day, what they do with their spotty spheres, they've got like 14 or 13,000 young people giving product reviews, helping tell their story, engage with their product, and they're seeking out this really candid, honest, unbiased content. They don't care if you bag on their product, because the reality is Gen Z doesn't want just like the rose-colored glasses, here's why this product's awesome. They want to know, is it really awesome? What about it sucks? Because everything has elements that we don't love to it. So let's just be honest about it. Let's be really, really candid. Invite them in. Let them have access to your brand. Let them understand behind the scenes and how things are made, what it looks like. Because if you don't, they also know how to go get it. Like they're the smartest, most digitally savvy brand. They're going to find out who you are, about your product, where it comes from. They know how to do all the research. So the idea here is like give them the candid perspective. Let them see behind the scenes. Lily said this in LA in one of our interviews. When the actual people working on the brand talk about it, it makes it feel way more authentic, right? So when CEOs, when marketers, when product developers are actually out saying, oh, this was kind of the story behind this. This is why I started this brand. Like, here's a little behind the scenes look at how we do it. There's something that starts to build this really deep and meaningful and authentic connection. Again, it's all about having nothing to hide. They know how to find the tea. They're going to find it. So let's give them that honest info. Quick story. I mentioned we work with Hollister Abercrombie for the past 5 or so years, and what we built was actually a community of around 500 people. It's taken a couple different iterations over the years, but specifically with Hollister, over 500 different teens that kind of rotate in and out every month who are getting product in exchange for like, yeah, this is what sucks about it. This is what's really cool about it. Hey, I'm going to create some content, for you, and then we'll give them more product. And then all of a sudden they're showing up. They're able to like get behind the scenes access. They're able to go to campus. They're able to meet with product designers. The brand now has this unfiltered access to their very target customer from around the country, super diverse crew of young people, actually telling them what's going on in culture with their product, with their brand. And it's that kind of relationship where it's super mutual, where when you grant them that access to your brand, all of a sudden magic starts to happen. So that's this first one, this idea of really inviting them into your story. The second is this idea of like, listen all the time, right? Culture moves so fast, and your product may go in and out of waves where like, yeah, you're hyped, there is something really, really interesting happening. Or like, oh, we need to pivot, something's changing, and how do we pay attention to all that? We just talked a lot about data to end that panel, and I think data is essential, but it's not just the quant side of it. It's also like, how do you actually meet and talk and get real opinions from real people? There's a great story about Carhartt. I don't know how many of you are fans, big fan, but when the birth of work in progress, the sort of legend of it all is back in the 80s and 90s, Carhartt was this workwear brand forever, right? Blue collar workers, totally built for the elements and industrial work. And someone from the brand happened to be over in Europe and saw a bunch of skate kids wearing some of their gear. And they just started asking questions of these kids, like, what is it about this? And the kids are like, oh, there's also these hip hop artists who've also been kind of wearing it. And they just start to get really, really curious and have more and more conversations. And the next thing you know, they're like, we need to spin off this other thing. And that existed, work in progress actually existed for quite a while until it really took off in mainstream sort of like sneaker culture over the past decade or so, where it really has blown up. But the reality is they were listening. They were paying attention. They were trying to figure out where is our, and it was a total different path than like the core of their brand identity had been for so long. But they were sort of willing to listen and pay attention and talk to people and get out in the real world and understand what was going on in culture. I love this quote. Michael actually wrote a book, the sort of Carhartt Work in Progress Archives, and he said, I've always said that Carhartt didn't choose the culture chose the brand. And if that's not true today, for all of us in this room trying to really connect with culture in meaningful ways, I don't know what is. I love that. So in some ways, how do we create this culture of sort of like, ask me anything all the time? One of the programs we build is with Adidas, and we have people out in the real world, day in and day out, talking to consumers, talking to associates in store. This shoe sucks. Why does it suck? We're going to actually ladder that up and tell the brand. Like, this thing's really hot right now. What is it about this product that actually is making waves? Another one, shout out Jenny and Marion from Spotify. We've helped build their Spotify Culture Next for the past 5 years or so. And with it, we built this large culture collective of young people who are so tapped into the music scene from around the world, Tokyo, Seoul, Rio, like all over the place, helping us better understand where is music culture going in our market. What are those like little nuances and trends? What's the interesting stuff that's happening? And that had become a community that for years on end, we could go back and tap the same people and start to understand the shifts that would happen over time and help really percolate that in a way where everybody at Spotify and their advertising team can go out and really connect with culture in authentic ways. So it's all about listening, connecting into culture, and really understanding their heartbeat, not necessarily what we want to see come out into the world. And then lastly, we're going to talk about this, I'm assuming, the entire couple of days that we're here. How do you co-create? How do you give them the mic, give them the camera, turn it around, build these teams, these communities of people to truly help take your brand to the front edge of culture? The reality is that like culture moves, we call it free range culture. Like there's no borders between fashion and music and art and entertainment and gaming. Like it's all one giant fluid feed, right? And the idea is how do you step into their world and ebb and flow and sort of move with these creators today? Because the reality is they're not waiting for permission. We talk about the fact that this next generation is gatekeeperless. They're not waiting for a boardroom to give them permission or funding or, back in the day to become an artist, right? You had to actually work through a music label or sort of find your way to a talent scout. Today, all of these artists birthed in their basement. Like it's insane how much culture has changed on that front. So they're not waiting for our permission. They're going to go create. They're going to tell the stories they want to tell. They're going to go challenge your brand. They're going to go raise their voice. They're going to go make waves. The idea here is how do we empower their voice? How do we step in and not necessarily wait till the timing's right, but like truly give them permission to create on our behalf as brands? At the end of the day, like their stream is way greater than the mainstream. You can see this taking off in journalism and news, right? Like so many of Gen Z today aren't reading mainstream news. They're actually watching people on TikTok read the New York Times or give them a quick synopsis of what's going on. Like their feed and their stream dominates all of these mainstream, sort of media outlets and spaces and culture. So how do we step into that authentically and bridge it with them? How do we empower creators to take our brand out in their own way through their candid interpretation, through their creativity, and truly make some noise? In fact, 90% of Gen Z believe that a broad pop culture mainstream no longer even exists. Like the idea of going mainstream, the idea of going viral, not even in their minds anymore. But they're 3 times more likely to actually trust a product recommendation from a friend than they are from an ad or from a brand. So we know how powerful building a brand community and co-creating with young people today is for brands. In fact, when Mr. Beast wanted to launch his new version of Feastables, some chocolate bars, we co-created with them a cast of young people to tell the story. And here's why this worked incredibly well. We didn't tell them what to say. We didn't tell them what to do. We said, you want to partner and learn from one of the greatest creators in the world? And they all said, oh, hell yes, we do. And what we did was we just gave them a general brief. It's Halloween. What do you want to do? And they came up with the most brilliant shit. Like, it was so good. Very Jimmy style, like very disruptive, very interesting. But everyone brought their own perspective. And we took this out to college campuses all over the place. And they created some brilliant activations, social content. In fact, they like blew our minds. We only had 12 creators for this pilot program to help launch this new chocolate bar Feastables. We had 63 million people reached, just from 12 people. We also had 2 million engagements, and we were able to give out, through 12 people, 120,000 free chocolate bars to like seed them out into the world. Like, it blew up. It was so fun. And the point was not that we had some brilliant creative idea. It was that we could kind of pull in the right people who had great alignment with their brand, who understood the sort of Jimmy, way in which seeing the world, this Mr. Beast perspective, and then unleash their creativity, unleash their perspective on the world in a really, really dynamic way. So if I could end with anything, it would be this idea that it's not about any of us building our own worlds for brands to try to pull people into. It's about truly seeing the world through their lens and their perspective. It's about building sort of a community of people that can take your brand out into the world further than any of us ever could dream. And letting all of that revolve around who they are, adding value to their life, partnering with them to create, and building these rich brand communities that truly can take your brand further than we could ever dream or ever do on our own. We all know that like the traditional marketing funnel, it's broke. And a lot of our old ways of doing marketing just don't seem to work. But connecting with culture and authentically building a relationship with young people today and letting them tell our brand story will win every single time. That said, thank you. This has been a ton of fun. I have couple shout outs. This Vogue thing we did has actually been a blast. We're doing a little party tomorrow night, so if you want to come hang out with us and Vogue, free happy hour, it's in Williamsburg area. Come party with us. Come hit us up. We got a booth out here. That's tomorrow night. But then also, like, we shoot out insights every week. So if you want to, like, get our, perspective and tea every week, sign up for the Culture Brief. It's at archrival.com, or that's a QR code, but you knew that. And then lastly, we have a masterclass tomorrow where we're going to dive into these brand communities. What are they? How do you build one? The different types of them, and how you truly can build a brand community around your brand in an effective and dynamic way. So join our crew tomorrow. I don't remember what time it is, but there's a masterclass tomorrow with Archrival. We'd love to see you there. That's it. Thanks.